So after finishing the front turning axle in the previous video and getting a fresh new visa in my passport, it was finally time to begin work on the 4 rails that make up the length of the shepherd's hut. But this actually started back in the height of summer, a day I won't forget anytime soon. 3 days earlier, I'd ordered 4 6-meter green oak beams, 150 by 150 millimeters square, with no box art. Usually it takes about 2 weeks for the sawmill to cut orders ready for collection, and they'd even said that they'd have to go and find some taller, wider oak trees to cut the beams free of heart, which they do with this impressive piece of machinery. The logs are loaded onto this conveyor before being rolled up onto the track and cut into sections by this enormous beast. Then they get rolled off the track onto another conveyor ready for stacking. And you may remember this guy from when we cut those triangular rafters in the roof build. Anyway, only 2 days later, the phone rang. The wood was ready, but we weren't. The challenge with freshly cut green oak is that it's still full of water, which naturally evaporates over time. But in direct sun in the middle of August, that process goes much, much quicker, and bad things start to happen, such as bows. As you can see, within only 24 hours, the middle 2 had gone quite wonky, and it was now a race against the clock to get them home and out of the heat. Unfortunately, there hadn't been time to organise that 6-meter trailer we collected the seasoned oak with, so all I had was the tipper trailer and some trestles. But luckily I had my mum for company, who I don't think has had a day that stressful for quite a while. Coincidentally, there also happened to be a man fixing his truck nearby, who offered to transport the beams for quite a reasonable price once he'd got his motor running. Now you may have realised I'm not walking very well, and that is because I was having a flare-up in my hips from my autoimmune disease. So it was a challenging day on more than one front, and with my dad out of the country, it was now a solo mission to get the beams safely into shade.
Merci monsieur, bonne journée.
They are damn heavy. Eventually, I managed to get them all onto some trestles in the barn, and with the help of some straps, force the two outer beams straight to prevent them from bowing even further. And that is where I left them for a couple of months. These are what your arms look like after a day doing that. People might get worried. Good boy.
3, 2, 1. Yep.
So as you may remember, they were cut at 150 millimeters square, or roughly 6 inches, and the final dimension needs to be 125 millimeters square, about 5 inches. That's to match the seasoned oak that makes up the axles. But remember, this is green oak, which dries roughly an inch a year, so at least 3 years before they stop shrinking. The reason I got them cut at 150 millimeters square is because I knew they wouldn't be straight after a couple of months, or as it turned out, 24 hours. Having them oversized meant I could recut them perfectly straight and still be left with more than 125 millimeters square to anticipate the shrinkage. After taking many measurements, I settled on cutting them 135 millimeters square, which should have allowed me to cut the 2 good ones nice and straight and to cut out about half the bow on the bad ones. And if you're now thinking, am I just watching another video about cutting big beams into smaller beams? Then yes, you are. But I learned quite a few lessons doing these, and if you've reached this far in the build, then I think you'll find it interesting. Doing it like this is the most affordable way to use oak, even if it is a pain in the arse. But how much money am I saving? Well, I don't really know. So if you know how much green or seasoned oak costs per cubic foot or meter where you are, please let me know down below. Don't forget to add your country and county, and in the next video, I'll put together a summary for everyone. I'll also tell you how much these beams cost me. My preferred method after doing this a few times now is to pick the flattest face, run a string line, and then use the smaller track saw to make a very straight cut. It's actually better to not go this deep with the first cut. All you really need is 20 to 30 millimeters, so you can run a fence against it with the bigger saw. And as you can see, even cutting the good beam straight meant taking quite a lot off at the ends, whilst barely scratching the surface in the middle due to the bow. With the first easy beam cut, it was time to experiment. In the previous videos, a lot of people asked why not use a chainsaw mill or the Festool sword saw to cut beams. Well, that's an easy answer. The finish from a chainsaw is very rough and requires a lot of planing to get to the same smoothness as a circular saw cut. The more complicated question is why not use the Mafell portable bandsaw. After all, it can cut all the way through in one go, unlike the Makita, which at only 130mm is 20mm too shallow for this beam. So I decided to test this option on the next one. That's actually pretty good. I think I might be wrong. The three things that I thought it would struggle with were: number one, I didn't think the cut would be perfectly square or vertical. I thought that it would wander off at the bottom. Number two, I thought the finish would be more like this, which is from a much bigger sawmill bandsaw and needs planing. But the finish from this is good enough to leave it as is. And then number three, I thought these blades were really expensive, but they're only like 30 euros, which is £25 or $35. But if it means I can cut all these beams and possibly more for 30 euros, that's money well spent, because it will take half the time as using the circular saw. But I'm still going to use the track saw to make the first cut, so I've got a straight line. And then I'm going to put this fence on the Mafell and then come back off that straight edge, because that will save me having to try and follow a pencil line with this, which definitely wouldn't be straight. This is when I started to realize this wasn't going to be as easy as it sounded. Running off the fence meant most of the weight was unsupported by the beam, which was awkward to maneuver. Plus, I was going to have to pause to move the trestle out of the way once I reached it, which meant reversing the bandsaw out of the cut, which again is harder than it sounds. In fact, the pop you just heard was the bandsaw coming off the wheels, or so I thought. No. Back to plan A. So this is where the real fun starts, because these are really bowed. This one, it's got a bow like that, but at least this top face is quite flat all the way across. So I can make the first cut off this face. This one is bowed like this, and it's bowed like that, which you can probably see on camera. So I might have to use the planer to get one of these faces flat before I can make any cuts on that. But even though they're oversized, I can't just run straight lines now because there's still not enough width left. So I might even ratchet strap them to take some of the bow out, then do a straight cut, then release the ratchet straps, and then at least I've got an edge that I can use a guide off. It won't be straight, but it will mean that I don't have two straight cuts that end in a point. Does that make sense?
Nope, not a clue.
I'm going to work out the length I need already so I don't have to correct more than I need. I think I'm going to end up at 5,750. So 6,530 minus 5,750. So I can lose 780 millimeters, and I'm probably going to just half that and take it off either side. So I can come back 390 millimeters from this side, and I can do the same on the other end. Got some black ink for my ink line because I can't see the orange. So if I made a cut along this string line, I'd only end up with 125 in the middle. So instead I've got to try and straighten the bow until I get 135, which is there, and then I can make my cut along the string line. So this is where we're starting, and this is where we need to get to. Halfway. Now we're too far. And a quick promo for the jacket I'm wearing in the videos and which is now for sale. They took over a year to develop and I now have a vast quantity in stock ready to ship. Durability was the priority, and after using this for most of the year, it's easily stood up to the test. It's designed as a work jacket, so has various pockets, one inside to protect from dust, 3 on the stomach, and 1 on the arm to keep track of pens, pencils, rulers. I want to sell as many as possible before Christmas, so there is free global shipping for the next couple of weeks. They're exceptionally good value for money compared to pretty much any other work jacket online, mainly because I ship them myself in batches either from France for EU orders or London for UK and international orders, so no hidden import charges. The brand is called Koto, which will make sense soon enough, but you can find more information at www.kotoworks.com. Thanks for all the support. So the improvised straighten with strap cut technique resulted in a bow of only 20mm across nearly 6 meters of beam, which is pretty good, and will actually straighten itself out once there's a bit of weight on the chassis. And finally, it was on to the last beam, the trickiest of them all, bowed in 2 directions. But with my new technique, it actually went pretty well and goes to show that a lot was learned. And that's it for part 4. I'm very close to finishing the next video, so expect that shortly. And remember, free global shipping on the jackets for the next couple of weeks. Thanks very much.